Hey everyone, ready to dish the pressure of being perfect? Well, today we are doing a deep dive into understanding perfectionism and maybe finding some ways to break free from it.
Ooh, that sounds interesting.
We've got a couple of great sources today.
Okay.
An article from All Points North, a mental health treatment center, and also a research paper abstract that really dives into the psychology behind perfectionism.
Nice.
They both tackle this whole perfectionism thing, but they come at it from slightly different angles,
It's interesting.
which I think is going to make our conversation today even more interesting.
Awesome.
And just to be super clear up front,
Yeah.
this deep dive is not about settling for being average or whatever.
Yeah.
It's about moving away from those crazy expectations we put on ourselves
Yeah.
and the constant self-criticism that can really hold us back.
Mhm.
We're looking for a healthier, happier way to achieve our goals and, actually grow as people.
I think that's a really important place to start.
Yeah.
Because there's a big difference between striving for excellence,
Mm-hmm.
which can be a really good thing,
For sure.
and then getting stuck in that perfectionism cycle,
Yeah.
where it's like the fear of failing just takes over everything.
Ugh, it's the worst.
It is.
And you know what? I have a perfect example of this.
Oh, yeah.
Remember that presentation I had to give at work a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I remember that.
Oh my gosh. I spent hours
I bet.
rearranging those slides and obsessing over every single word.
Wow.
By the time I was done, I was exhausted,
I can only imagine.
stressed out.
Yeah.
And honestly, I don't even think the presentation was any better because of all that agonizing.
Oh, no.
Have you ever found yourself in that kind of perfectionism spiral?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's so common.
And that's a classic example of how the research paper defines perfectionism.
Okay.
Those crazy high standards and the brutal self-criticism.
Yeah.
But here's what I found really interesting.
Okay.
The paper breaks down perfectionism into 3 different types.
Really?
There's self-oriented,
Okay.
other-oriented,
Interesting.
and socially prescribed perfectionism.
Wow. Okay.
So self-oriented is like your presentation thing.
Mhm.
It's all about the impossible standards we set for ourselves.
Yeah.
Then you've got other-oriented.
Okay.
That's when we expect everyone else to be perfect too,
Oh, yeah.
which can be really tough on relationships.
For sure.
And then there's socially prescribed perfectionism.
Okay.
It's that feeling that everyone expects us to be perfect,
right.
even if they don't say it out loud.
That one really hits home for me,
Yeah.
that everyone expects me to be perfect thing.
It's tough.
It's like this invisible pressure,
Yeah.
But where does all this pressure come from? Is it you're born with it?
Yeah. Is it nature?
Or is it something you learn?
Nurture.
Or maybe a little bit of both.
Probably.
It's probably a mix.
Most likely.
What do you think?
It's definitely a combination of things. The All Points North article talks a lot about this.
Okay.
And they start by talking about early childhood experiences.
Makes sense.
So think back to when you were a kid.
Okay.
Were your parents always pushing you to achieve things?
That's interesting.
Did you get more praise for your accomplishments
Okay.
than for just being yourself?
I see where you're going with this.
Yeah.
The article talks about how for some people,
Yeah.
love and approval were tied to achievements,
Right.
which can make you think that being perfect is the only way to be worthy.
Exactly.
It's like a subconscious equation.
Interesting.
Achievement equals love,
Mm-hmm.
and anything less than perfect equals failure.
Yeah. And it's not even always about what your parents told you to do.
Right.
Sometimes it's just watching how the adults around you acted.
God, that's a good point.
If the grown-ups in your life were always striving for perfection.
Always pushing themselves.
Yeah. To do more,
Be more.
achieve more.
It makes sense that you would pick up on that.
Yeah, definitely.
It's like that saying,
What's that?
more is caught than taught.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not all about our childhoods, is it?
No, it's not.
The article also mentions that personality traits can play a role,
Oh, for sure.
like being conscientious
Yeah.
or neurotic.
Right. So it's not just our environment that matters.
It's also our genes.
Our individual personalities
Makes sense.
can also make us more likely to be perfectionists.
Okay.
I know those terms can sound a bit clinical,
They do.
but let me explain them in simple terms.
Okay.
So imagine someone who color codes their calendar
Oh, yeah.
and plans out every single detail of their day.
I know a few people like that.
That's conscientiousness in action.
I see.
They're organized,
Yeah.
detail-oriented,
Very much so.
and really driven to do things right.
Mm-hmm.
These traits can be really helpful in a lot of ways.
Definitely.
But they can also make someone more prone to perfectionism.
That makes sense.
And then there's neuroticism,
Okay.
which basically means being more prone to anxiety and sensitive to criticism.
Interesting.
So if you're someone who naturally worries a lot,
Okay.
and cares about what others think,
Yeah.
that fear of failure can really fuel perfectionistic tendencies.
Wow. So it really is like
Yeah,
a perfect storm of nature and nurture.
it
Our
is.
upbringing,
Mm-hmm.
our personality.
Yep.
And then, of course, we can't forget about the pressure cooker of today's world.
Oh, yeah. Society plays a huge role, too.
Right.
Think about the media.
Okay.
We're constantly bombarded with
Yeah.
images of perfect lives,
Yeah.
successful careers,
So true.
flawless bodies.
It's everywhere.
It's like they're creating these impossible standards.
that no one can actually live up to.
Exactly.
And then you throw social media into the mix.
Don't even get me started.
It's like everyone is just showing off their highlight reel
Their best selves.
all the time,
All the time.
which makes you feel like you're always falling short.
It's so easy to fall into that comparison trap.
Oh, I know. I do it all the time. It can make your own life feel pretty lame.
Totally.
And you know the All Points North article?
Yeah.
They talk about how schools and workplaces can be like pressure cookers too.
Right.
They put so much emphasis on performance.
And not enough on well-being.
Exactly.
It's like we're trained to believe that our worth
Yeah.
is tied to how much we achieve.
And how productive we are.
Exactly.
And that's got to be so damaging in the long run.
You'd be really unhealthy.
Okay, so we've talked about how perfectionism has these deep roots. It's fueled by all this external pressure,
Yeah.
and it can have some pretty bad consequences.
For sure.
But before we spiral into a pit of despair, there's got to be a way out, right?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
There has to be.
The good news is there are definitely ways to break free from this.
Okay, good.
From this grip of perfectionism.
Already?
And find a healthier,
Yeah.
more joyful way to approach achievement
That sounds amazing.
and growth.
I like it.
And that's exactly what we're going to dive into in the next part of this deep dive.
Okay, so we've explored the dark side of perfectionism,
Hmm.
but now I'm really curious to hear about the solutions, those strategies that can help us loosen its hold
Yeah.
and find a more balanced way of living.
Exactly.
I can't wait.
We'll definitely be exploring all of that,
Awesome.
using insights from both the research paper and the All Points North article.
Fantastic.
So stay tuned.
So until then, everyone,
Yeah.
think about what we've discussed today.
It's a lot to think about.
I know.
Take some time.
To think about what kind of perfectionist tendencies you might recognize in yourself.
Good idea.
And what are you hoping to gain from learning how to break free?
Interesting question.
We'll be back soon to explore the path towards a less perfect.
But much happier.
So true.
See you then.
Bye.
Welcome back, everyone.
It's good to be back.
So I hope you had a chance to think about those different types of perfectionism we talked about.
Yeah. And maybe even recognize some of those tendencies in yourself.
Hopefully.
But now let's shift gears a bit
Okay.
and talk about solutions.
I like it.
The good news is
Okay.
you absolutely can break free from this grip of perfectionism.
You really can.
It's not going to happen overnight, obviously.
No, it takes time.
But with consistent effort
Yeah.
and the right strategy,
For sure.
you can cultivate a healthier, more balanced approach to life.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you know what?
Okay.
Both of our sources today really emphasize
Yeah.
the power of self-compassion
Oh, yeah. Self-compassion is huge.
as a key starting point.
It's essential.
And this isn't just about being nice to yourself,
Right. It's deeper than that.
although that's certainly never a bad thing.
Of course not.
But it's more about fundamentally shifting how you relate to yourself,
Mm-hmm.
especially in those moments when you make a mistake
Totally.
or face a setback.
Everyone messes up sometimes.
Everyone.
So true.
So instead of beating ourselves up for every little thing that goes wrong,
Yeah.
we need to treat ourselves with the same kindness and understanding that we would offer a friend.
Exactly like you would never talk to a friend the way some people talk to themselves.
Oh my gosh, I know.
Right.
It's so true.
And you know what's really cool?
Right.
The research paper cites studies that show how self-compassion
Mm-hmm.
can actually reduce those perfectionistic tendencies.
Wow.
And it can also improve your overall well-being.
It makes a lot of sense when you think about it.
It does.
But how do we actually put self-compassion into practice?
That's the question, isn't it?
It sounds great in theory,
Sure.
but when you're in the middle of that self-critical spiral,
Mm-hmm.
it can be tough to shift gears.
Yeah, I get it.
So what do we do?
Well, the paper offers some really practical tips.
Okay, good. I need those.
First, you have to start by noticing those self-critical thoughts.
Okay, so pay attention.
Yeah. Be mindful of what's going on in your head.
Right.
So when you catch yourself thinking, I'm
Right.
such a failure,
Yeah.
or I should have done better, just pause for a second
Okay.
and ask yourself,
Yeah.
Would I say this to a friend?
That's a good question.
If not,
Yeah.
then why are you saying it to yourself?
Wow, that's powerful.
Right.
And the article suggests
What's that?
that we try to replace those negative thoughts
Yeah.
with more compassionate ones.
Exactly.
So instead of saying I'm a failure,
yeah.
maybe you could say
What could you say?
I'm learning and growing.
I like that.
Or everyone makes mistakes.
Mm.
It's part of being human.
It is.
So true.
And don't underestimate the power of just acknowledging your humanity. What do you mean by that?
Well, you're not perfect.
True.
And that's okay.
It is.
Making mistakes. It's
Yeah.
part of the human experience. It doesn't make you a failure.
Right.
It just makes you human.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's like giving ourselves permission to be imperfect.
To embrace our flaws and learn from our mistakes.
That's the key.
And speaking of mistakes,
Okay.
both of our sources today talk about
Yeah.
reframing those mistakes as opportunities for growth
Mm.
rather than seeing them as evidence that we're not good enough.
Right. It's all about perspective.
So it's like
yeah.
turning those I should haves
Mm.
into now I knows.
I like that.
It's a good way to look at it.
And it's about recognizing
Yeah.
that even those experiences that feel really negative in the moment can actually help us grow in the long run.
So we're learning to be kinder to ourselves.
Yeah.
We're reframing our mistakes as
Yeah.
opportunities for learning.
Exactly.
What else can we do to break free from this perfectionism trap?
Well, a big part of it is setting realistic goals.
Okay, so not aiming for perfection.
Right. Because perfectionists often set the bar so high
Yeah.
that they're almost guaranteed to fall short.
Which just makes them feel worse.
Exactly. It reinforces those feelings of inadequacy.
And you know what? I remember the All Points North article
Yeah.
really emphasizing the importance of breaking down those large, daunting tasks.
Yeah. Those big, overwhelming goals.
Into smaller, more manageable steps.
Right. Break it down into bite-sized pieces.
It's a lot less intimidating that way.
It is.
So it's about creating a sense of progress and accomplishment along the way.
Exactly.
Rather than just focusing on that final,
Yeah.
often unattainable
Right.
outcome.
It's like climbing a mountain.
Oh, I like that analogy.
You don't just focus on reaching the summit the whole time.
No.
You focus on taking one step at a time,
Yeah.
making steady progress.
And enjoying the view along the way.
That's a great way to think about it.
And speaking of setting realistic goals,
Yeah.
remember the SMART goals framework we've talked about before?
Oh, yeah. Smart goals.
Specific, measurable,
Yep.
achievable,
That's the key.
relevant,
Uh-huh.
and time-bound.
I love it.
Using that framework can really help make sure that your goals are actually realistic
For sure.
and align with what you truly value,
Right.
rather than being driven by some external pressure to be perfect,
It helps you create a roadmap for success that feels manageable and motivating.
rather than overwhelming and anxiety-provoking.
Exactly.
So we're shifting our mindset, we're setting better goals.
Yeah.
Anything else we need to add to our anti-perfectionism toolkit?
Well, both sources also talk about the importance of mindfulness.
Mindfulness.
Yeah. Have you heard of that?
I have, but I'm not sure I totally get it.
Well, in a nutshell,
Okay.
it's about staying present
Okay.
and focused on the here and now.
So less ruminating on past mistakes.
Right.
And less worrying about future what-ifs.
Exactly.
Okay, I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
When we're caught up in that perfectionistic thinking, it's easy to get lost in a spiral of negative thoughts.
It is.
Mindfulness seems like a way to break free from that cycle
It can be.
and ground ourselves in the present moment.
Right.
So how do we do it?
Well, there are a lot of different mindfulness practices,
Okay.
like meditation
Yeah,
and deep breathing.
I've heard of those.
And the research actually shows that these practices
Okay.
can actually reduce perfectionism
Wow.
and foster a sense of acceptance.
That sounds really nice.
It is.
And you know what? Even something as simple as taking a few deep breaths
Yeah.
can help interrupt those automatic perfectionist thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and bring you back to the here and now.
It's like hitting the pause button on that inner critic
I like that.
and giving yourself a moment to just be.
Just be.
Yeah.
So we've got self-compassion,
Mm-hmm.
reframing mistakes,
Mm.
realistic goals,
Yeah.
and mindfulness.
You've got a lot of tools.
I'm already feeling less stressed just thinking about all this.
That's great to hear.
But it's important to acknowledge that
Okay.
letting go of perfectionism can
Yeah.
be challenging,
You can.
especially when it's been a lifelong pattern.
For sure.
And the research paper actually addresses some of the common barriers
Oh, yeah.
that people face
It's not always easy.
in this process.
Right.
One that really stood out to me was
Yeah.
the fear of losing motivation.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one.
It's like,
Yeah.
if I'm not constantly striving for perfection,
Mm.
won't I just become complacent
Like, you'll just stop trying.
and stop trying?
It's a valid concern.
It is.
But here's the thing.
Okay.
Letting go of perfectionism doesn't mean lowering your standards.
Oh, okay.
It's about finding a more sustainable and enjoyable way to achieve your goals.
So it's not about settling for mediocrity.
Right.
It's about finding a balance
Yeah.
between striving for excellence
Mm.
and being kind to ourselves in the process.
Exactly. And the reality is
Yeah.
that constant pressure to be perfect
Yeah.
often leads to burnout,
Oh, for sure.
which actually sabotages our motivation in the long run.
So it's counterproductive.
Can be.
So by letting go of that pressure,
Mm-hmm.
you're actually creating space for more sustainable motivation
Absolutely.
and more genuine enjoyment of the process.
That's the goal.
It's like that saying,
What's that?
the flame that burns twice as bright burns half as long.
Oh, I like that one.
It's so true.
Another barrier the research paper mentions is
Yeah.
the challenge of those deeply ingrained habits.
Oh, yeah?
It's like those perfectionistic tendencies
Mm-hmm.
have become so automatic,
So ingrained.
so much a part of who we are
Yeah.
that it feels almost impossible to change.
I know that feeling.
That's understandable.
But progress takes time and effort.
It does.
And you don't have to change everything overnight.
No, you don't.
Start small.
Small steps.
Instead of trying to change everything at once.
Yeah,
Focus on challenging one perfectionist thought a day
I like that.
or setting one realistic goal for the week
It's about making those small changes.
that add up over time.
That's
Small
all.
steps
Fun, sir.
lead to big changes.
They do.
Right.
Yeah.
And finally,
Yeah. We need to talk about the challenge of navigating external expectations.
oh, yeah, that's a tough one.
Even if we manage to shift our own mindset,
Mm-hmm.
how do we deal with the pressure from bosses,
Yeah.
partners?
Family members,
And
for
trying to prove
society
it.
as a whole.
Right.
It's like everyone expects us to be perfect.
It can be really hard to ignore that.
It can.
So what do we do?
Well, that's where setting boundaries comes in.
Boundaries and practicing assertiveness.
You have the right to define what success means to you.
Not what other people expect of you.
Exactly. And sometimes
Yeah.
that means saying no.
Even when it feels uncomfortable.
It can be hard, but it's important.
So it's about prioritizing your own well-being
Yeah.
and focusing on what truly matters to you,
Right.
rather than trying to please everyone else.
You can't make everyone happy.
It's so true.
You can't control what other people think or expect.
But you can control how you respond to those expectations.
That's the key.
This has been so insightful. I'm glad you think so.
We've explored the roots of perfectionism,
Well, we have.
its impact on our lives, and most importantly,
Yeah.
those powerful strategies for breaking free.
We've covered a lot.
But we're not quite done yet, are we?
Not quite. There's one more crucial element we need to discuss.
Oh, okay.
And that's how to overcome those barriers to change
Mm-hmm.
and truly make these strategies stick.
I like it.
We'll be back in part 3
Okay.
to explore that and more.
Great.
So stay tuned.
Until then, everyone,
Yeah,
keep practicing that self-compassion.
it's so important.
Challenge those perfectionistic thoughts.
Don't let them control you.
And remember,
What's that?
progress,
Yes.
not perfection. Yes.
Exactly.
It's the goal.
We'll see you soon for part 3.
See you then. All right, we are back for the final part
The grand finale.
of our deep dive into
We're breaking free.
perfectionism.
I feel like we have uncovered
So much.
the what, the why.
Yeah.
And we even started talking about the how.
But, you know,
Yeah.
knowing what to do and actually putting it into practice,
Those are two very different things.
two very different things. It's like
Changing.
having all the tools,
Yeah, a whole toolbox.
but no clue how to use them.
Exactly.
So how do we bridge that gap?
That's the million-dollar question.
How do we take all these amazing strategies we've been talking about and actually like integrate them into our daily lives?
That's all about application.
Application.
Yeah.
So how do we do it?
Well, first things first,
Okay.
be patient with yourself.
Patience.
You're basically trying to rewire years of ingrained patterns.
Yeah, that's a lot of rewiring.
It is.
So it's not going to happen overnight.
No, it's a process.
So no need to beat ourselves up.
No beating yourself up.
If we catch ourselves slipping back into those old habits.
Absolutely not remember what we said about self-compassion.
Yeah, be kind to ourselves.
This is where it really comes in handy.
So if you notice yourself falling back into those perfectionistic thought patterns,
Yeah, those old familiar patterns.
what do we do?
Don't judge yourself.
Okay.
Just gently acknowledge it
Okay.
and redirect your attention back to those strategies we've been exploring.
Get back on track.
Gently redirect.
It's like learning a new language, right?
Oh, I like that analogy.
You're going to make mistakes.
For sure.
You're going to stumble over words.
It's part of the process.
But the key is to keep practicing
Yeah.
and not get discouraged.
Don't give up.
Don't give up.
And just like learning a new language,
Yeah.
consistency is key.
Consistency is key.
The more you practice
Mm.
those self-compassion practices,
Yeah.
those reframing techniques,
Those mindfulness exercises.
the more natural they'll become.
So we're talking about making these strategies a habit.
Yes, something you do automatically, almost without thinking about it.
And remember,
Yeah.
even small, consistent efforts
Little by little,
can lead to big changes over time.
they really can.
It's the small things that make a big difference.
That's right.
Okay, so we're being patient with ourselves.
Patience.
You're being consistent.
Consistency.
What else can we do to make this transition a little bit smoother?
Well, the All Points North article
Yeah.
had a great suggestion.
Okay, I'm listening.
Seek support from others.
Other people.
Yeah, don't be afraid to talk to friends,
Okay.
family members,
Yeah.
or even a therapist.
It can be helpful to talk to someone
It can.
about what you're going through.
Sharing your struggles can be really liberating.
Oh, yeah. It gets it off your chest.
It does. And it can also give you some valuable insights and perspectives.
It's true. Sometimes you just need someone to listen.
Sometimes that's all it takes.
And I can see how that would be really helpful.
Yeah.
Especially when you're struggling with something like perfectionism.
It's easy to feel isolated.
Yeah, like you're the only one going through it.
Exactly. But just knowing that you're not alone,
That can make a huge difference.
it really can.
And having that support system in place.
Yeah, your own personal cheerleading squad
I like that.
can be so valuable,
For sure.
especially when those external pressures start to creep back in.
So true. It's like having people to remind you that you're on the right track.
Exactly. Surround yourself with people who encourage your growth,
Yeah.
who celebrate your progress,
Yeah.
and who remind you that you are worthy of love and acceptance.
Regardless of your achievements.
It's about who you are, not what you do.
Love that.
And as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah?
I just want to emphasize one more time
Okay.
that breaking free from perfectionism
Yeah.
is not about becoming complacent
Right.
or settling for mediocrity.
It's not about giving up.
No, it's about finding a more balanced and sustainable way to pursue excellence.
It's about finding that sweet spot.
Exactly.
So it's not about lowering our standards.
No.
It's about raising our self-compassion.
That's it.
It's about embracing the journey,
Yeah.
not just the destination.
Enjoy the ride.
It's about finding joy in the process, not just in the outcome.
Yeah.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
I agree.
I feel like I have a whole new toolkit
Awesome.
for tackling my own perfectionistic tendencies.
That's great to hear.
And you know what?
What's that?
You're not alone in this journey.
So many people struggle with this.
Millions of people.
And by embracing imperfection,
Mm-hmm.
by letting go of those unrealistic expectations
Yeah.
and that harsh self-criticism,
It's so freeing.
it is you open yourself up to a world of possibilities,
I love that.
a world where you can truly thrive.
So as we close out this deep dive,
Yeah.
I want to leave you with a challenge.
I'll let you.
What is one small step you can take today
Just one small step.
to break free from this grip of perfectionism?
What will it be?
Maybe it's practicing self-compassion the next time you make a mistake,
That's a good one.
or setting a more realistic goal for the week.
Love it.
Whatever it is,
Yeah.
commit to it
Make the commitment.
and remember.
Progress,
Yes,
not perfection,
that's...
is the ultimate goal. That's what we're going for.
Yeah, absolutely.
The world needs your authentic, imperfect self,
It does.
not some idealized version.
That you'll never actually achieve.
It's not about being perfect.
So go out there.
Yeah.
Embrace your imperfections.
Be yourselves.
And make the world a little less perfect,
a little less perfect.
but a whole lot more beautiful.
That's what we need.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time,
Yeah.
stay curious
Stay compassionate.
and keep learning.
We'll see.